Hi, and welcome to Getting Your Feet Wet with Technology. This is week 1, and my name is Melanie Eisen. I am the Associate Director for Professional Development at the YU School Partnership. One of the topics that comes up frequently in professional development is how to get your feet wet with technology. Teachers know that they need to use the technology in their classrooms, but they're uncomfortable in this digital world. Recently, I've heard that speaking of myself only, of course, I'm an immigrant in this world. I understand that I have to conform to it, but I also understand that I am an immigrant and I need to get into this world slowly. But I also understand that it's a world that I need to get used to, and it's a world that I need to bring into my classroom as well. So one way I like to start these kinds of discussions is to look at the images that you see on the screen right now. Of course, in the top left, you have a camera that doesn't look like your phone. You have a teacher that looks, I think it is Doris Day, and then you have books. So at some point, all of these pictures have been, all of these images, all of these objects, and of course the person have been used to transfer information from these objects or these people to the students. Well, now that looks differently in classrooms. Of course, books are still very important, and especially to our coded teachers, using books is still as important. Having images, very important. And of course, the teacher, very important, but these aren't the only sources of information. So if you think about how each of these images have been used in the past and how they can be used moving forward, it might be an interesting debate to have in a classroom as to who prefers to use their book or their Kindle. How do they prefer to get their information? And when they take a picture, how do they get the results? As you look at this slide, it brings the question, what does literacy mean for us today? If you had asked me this question when I started teaching 22 years ago, I would have said that to be literate, you had to understand how to get books, how to open books, how to get the information from the books. When I was in college, of course, it was the card catalog that we used to get information, Encyclopedia Britannica, the World Book. All of these were the main sources of information that made me a literate person if I could open up a newspaper, find an article, look up a periodical, pull out cards from the card catalog to be able to do my research projects. Being literate now looks completely different. When we talk about literacy and we talk about digital literacy, we can talk about it in a variety of ways. One way, as Ellen November likes to think about it, is using the internet, using this new world of technology to bring the world into our classrooms and for us to go out into the world through this tool. Top right side, you see what makes your students tick. It's not just about one venue anymore. It's not just you as the only source of information, or books as the only source of information, or their parents as the only sources of information. Kids can be multi-apping, I read the other day. They can find multiple ways to get information, and none of it will involve going up and down stairs in the college library, I can assure you. Doing research has taken on a completely different image, a completely different way of gaining information, and we have to be ready that our kids have this information literally at their fingertips. As we ask them questions in the classroom, it's important to remember that some of the questions that we ask, if we're teaching social studies, if we're teaching a class that you ask any question, if they can use it, get that information by using their fingertips, they literally opening up their phone or turning on their phone and Googling a question, is it worth asking in the classroom anymore? How can we use this technology? How can we use this access to information to our advantage in our classrooms to take what is so natural to our students and bring it into the learning every day? On the bottom of the screen, you see what would be described as action research. First, we're going to think about, analyze, and evaluate what we do in our classrooms. We're going to create a model for them to follow. Maybe try bringing in a new tool, a new technological tool that will enable the learning. Allow us to reflect some, act on what we've done, and assess it one more time to see, did we indeed meet our goals by bringing in this technology? So our essential questions moving forward are as follows. What needs to evolve in education to meet the worlds we are living in? How will we adjust the way we teach to match the way our students learn? How should we adjust our curricula, our assessments, our physical spaces to reflect the new world reality? These are not just essential questions that we'll be tackling in the next 2 weeks, but things to think about as you move forward in your practice. The technologies of today is already outdated. We've already moved on. 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and so on. iPhone 4, iPhone 5, iPhone 6, they get bigger, they get smaller, they get sleeker, they get stronger. We as teachers have to learn to bring these tools into our classroom so that the content that is so important to us, especially for those of us that teach codish classes, the content itself is not changed and should not change, but the mode in which we bring this information to our students, in which we have them interact with the same issues, the same topics that our sages have dealt with, the way we create projects and assessment tools and questions for understanding need to reflect the real world, so that our students walk into the classrooms to see the light of the Torah with light in their eyes, as we bring about the motivational tools using the technology to make the content more accessible to our students. This is a wonderful graphic because what it shows is that the technology is around. The most important relationship is that between the teacher, the student, and the content. That's where the learning takes place. The teacher knows the content inside and out. The teacher knows the student inside and out. The teacher uses their knowledge of both the student and the content to access the learning. But sometimes, and maybe more than sometimes, the technology can be that tool to enable the student to access the learning, to access the content. This triangle in the center should never be broken. In other words, technology should not replace one of the sides of this. The teacher is always the one that's going to be the guide on the side, not the technology. The technology could be the tool to enable the student to interact in a better and stronger and more meaningful way with the content, but not to the detriment of learning the content. Whenever a teacher sets out to plan a lesson, to decide what the goals are going to be, it's very important that the teacher decide by the end of the lesson or by the end of the unit, the students will be able to know, understand, and do with the content. What will they know? What will they understand? And how will they be able to interact with that content? Will the technology lend a hand in getting the teacher to understand what the students know and understand, helping the students to show their teachers what they can do with the content? That's something for the teacher to decide, and sometimes with the help of the students to show which technological tools will they be using in order to better understand the content. First, you have to know your students, right? First, you have to know where they're coming from, what tools they have available to them, how they like to learn. That's called a learner profile. The learner profile helps us to understand our students. The students can tell us about their prior knowledge, their interests, what environment is most conducive to their learning. The learner profile can give the parents a chance to communicate to the teacher, can help the teacher plan his activities according to students' prior knowledge, interests, learning styles, and in this case, access to technology. This will help involve the students in planning for the year and help the teacher to create a buffet of assessment tools and learning activities for the year that match their goals. This is a cute one that I found, almost like a Facebook page. You can imagine what kinds of questions you might want to ask your students, especially when it comes to technology. I want you to think about this in a way that will help you gain knowledge, gain access to how your students learn. One of the questions that you might want to ask your students is, how much time do you spend on a computer? And when you're on the computer or on a device, what is it that you're doing on it? Which games have most meaning to you? Which apps have the most meaning to you? When you go out and you're on your phone, which pieces of information are you gaining from your phone? How often do you use Google on your phone? And what other source of information are you using? These kinds of tools will help you to form assessments and activities to help your students gain access to the material. We used to just do a KWL chart, know, want to know, and learn to chart. Now we can add these pieces. The K and the W are still there. The H has changed. How can I find out? Maybe it's a tool that I can use technology for. What have I learned is the same. What action will I take? Now that the knowledge, so much of it can be at our fingertips, it's more important about what can I do now that I have the knowledge, and what new questions do I have now that I've gained the knowledge. These 21st century tools of taking action, asking more questions, having different ways of finding out the information are really 21st century in nature and will help us to move forward in reaching our students. When we look at the SAMR model, it's almost like a Bloom's taxonomy using technology. There are ways that there's a lowest level and the highest level. So as you move forward in your practice of bringing technology into your classroom, think about why you're bringing it in. Just like in Bloom's taxonomy, it might be just at the bottom, we're just substituting The tech is going to act as a direct tool substitute with no functional change. To the highest level, where on Bloom's side it would be creating, on the SAMR side, it's redefinition. The technology allows for the creation of new tasks previously inconceivable, only being able to be done through the use of technology. So when you think about using technology in your classroom as a motivator, here are some ideas that might help you to get started. Using Skype in the classroom, using YouTube in the classroom, using blogging as a communication tool. All of these sites are ways to tools and apps to bring the content to your students and to have them show you what you have learned. So this week, what I want you to do is I'm going to put this PowerPoint in the Learn section, which is the second to last section, the third section in the week. And what I want you to do is open up these different links and see which ones speak to you. Maybe they're ones you've used before. Maybe you haven't seen them in this arena. But I want you to think first about what are the tools that are available to your classroom, what technology is available to your classroom, in your classroom, what technology is available for your students. In that case, you might want to be taking a poll from your students of what they have at home, what they feel comfortable using, if they're allowed to be on it at home, what access you have in your classroom. And then either allow them to look at these or look at them yourselves. Each of these links leads to the site where you can learn a little bit more about each of them. I've used many of them in my classroom. I'm using Screencast-O-Matic right now. I really believe in Educand. I think it's a great site. Some of these cost, some of them are free. My sons have used a bunch of these in their classrooms to be able to show their teacher what they know, what they've understood within their practice, within their classrooms. You talk about differentiating instruction. You can differentiate according to the content, according to the process, and according to the product. What a great way to be able to differentiate in your classroom when you can say to your students, here are some new tools for you to try. My caveat, though, for you as a teacher is that the kids not get sidetracked by the tool, right? I always said even when I taught kindergarten, I was introducing a new math tool, a new math manipulative, that I let them play a little bit before they actually got down to work. So the newness of it is not the tool. So you let them play with it a little bit and then say, how could you use this tool to show me what you know about the content that we learned this week? So I hope you have fun. I hope that you learned something new. I hope you share something new with me as well. I look forward to seeing you online.